Hi everyone and welcome to Smart Culture Education. This is the place where we make learning simple, clear and engaging. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you can join us on this journey of mastering maths, science and more. So the standard form is y equals a to the power of x minus p plus q. Let's discuss the coefficient a. It indicates the shape of the exponential graph. If a is more than 1, it means that there is exponential growth and the graph increases as x increases. If a falls between 0 and 1, it represents exponential decay. It means that the graph decreases as x increases. Let's take a look at the parameters affecting the graph. We'll start with parameter p. It affects the horizontal shifts of the graph. If p is positive, the graph is shifted to the left. If p is negative, the graph is shifted to the right. What about the parameter q? It represents the horizontal asymptote at y equals q, indicating where the graph approaches but never touches. It shifts the graph vertically. If q is positive, it shifts the graph upwards, and if q is negative, the graph will be shifted downwards. What about the domain and range? The domain, all real numbers. The range depends on the values of a and q. Typically, y is all real numbers greater than q if a is more than 1, or all real numbers less than q if a is between 0 and 1 due to decay.
We first look at question 5, and this is from the November 2020 question paper, and the average that students scored for this question was 45%. The question gives us the graph of fx equal to 3 to the power of minus x. A is the y-intercept of f, b is the point of intersection of f, and the line y equals 9. Before you look at the questions that follow, first look at the graph and identify what you can from this graph. First of all, this is an exponential graph. It is a decreasing graph. The y-intercept was given to us, that's the point A, and the point B was also given to us as the point of intersection of f and the line y equals 9. Another thing that is of importance when you look at the question is to try and identify the asymptote of this graph. Remember, the asymptote is the horizontal line in this case that the graph will move towards but will never intersect. So in this case, that is the line y equals 0 or the x-axis. Now let's look at question 5.1. We are now going to discuss questions 5.1 to 5.3. In question 5.1, students scored an average of 85%, so that was not too difficult. Question 5.2, they scored 77%, and then in question 5.3, they scored 34%. So make sure that you understand question 5.3. Let's begin. Let's look at this question. Here they ask at 5.1, write down the coordinates of A. Now, first of all, you need to identify what A is of this exponential graph. And as you can see, A lies on the y-axis, and that means A is the y-intercept of the graph F. And what happens at a y-intercept? At the y-intercept, x is always equal to 0. So you take the equation of fx is 3 to the power of minus x, and you make x equal to 0 in the equation. And when you solve the equation, it gives you that y's value is 1. So the coordinates of A is 0 and 1. This question counted 1 mark, and you get 1 mark for the final answer, the coordinates of A. Let's look at 5.2. Determine the coordinates of B. So let's look at the sketch. There you have B, and B is the intercept of this exponential function f and the line y equals 9. Remember, horizontal line is always y equal to. And then in the equation of f, we make y equal to 9. So we get then that 9 is equal to 3 to the power of minus x, and this is an exponential equation that we need to solve. So we need to make the bases of both sides of the equation the same. So we can write 9 as 3 to the power of 2. Then we have 3 to the power of 2 is equal to 3 to the power of negative x. And if the bases are the same, we can then say that the exponents are equal. So that means x is equal to negative 2. And now we need to write down the coordinates of B as it is asked in the question. So B's coordinates is then negative 2 and 9. Let's look at the mark allocation. You get 1 mark for equating 9 and 3 to the power of minus x, 1 mark for changing 9 to 3 squared, and then 1 mark for x equals -2. Let's look at question 5.3. Here they say write down the domain of f inverse. Now, first question, what is domain? Domain is all the x values of this function. And remember that inverse function's domain will correspond to the range of the original function. So let's first look at this function f and determine the range of the function. That's all the y values. So the y values of this function f will be all y values from 0 to infinity. But 0 is not included because 0 is a horizontal asymptote. So the range for the function f will be 0 to infinity. And then the domain of the inverse will be similar to this. Remember, with a function and the inverse, the x and the y values swap. So we can then write that the domain of the function f inverse is all the x values from 0 to infinity. And we can write it in two ways. We can say x is an element of 0 to infinity. And please note the round brackets. The round bracket on the left shows that 0 is not included. And the round bracket at the right shows that infinity is not included. And infinity is never included. And then another way that you can write it is, you can also say all x values bigger than 0, where x is an element of real numbers. Let's look at the mark allocation. For this question, you get 2 marks for the final answer. In question 5.1, some students swapped the coordinates and gave the answer as 1, 0. So be careful when you write down the coordinates that you put 0 at the x coordinate and 1 at the y coordinate. In question 5.2, some candidates wrote 9 as 3 to the power of 3. So make sure 9 is equal to 3 to the power of 2. Then, when solving the exponential equation, some students divided by 3. So remember, when solving exponential equations, you have to make the bases the same. You can't divide by the base. Then, in question 5.3, a lot of students determined the domain of f instead of f inverse. And they also gave the answer as y element of 0 to infinity. So remember that all the x variables of f change to y in the inverse, but the domain of the inverse is still the set of x values. So be careful for that one. And then when you write down the domain and you use interval notation, make sure to use the correct brackets. Let's discuss question 5.4 and 5.5. Question 5.4, students scored an average of 11%. So make sure that you understand this question. And question 5.5, they scored 42%. Now let's look at question 5.4. Describe the translation from f to hx equal to 27 over 3 to the power of x. Now, first of all, we need to write hx in a similar form to fx. So if we have 27, we can write that as 3 to the power of 3. And the denominator 3 to the power of x can be written as 3 to the power of negative x. And since the bases are the same, we can combine this and write it as 3 to the power of 3 minus x. That can be rewritten as 3 to the power of minus x plus 3. And then 3 to the power of 3 minus x can be rewritten as 3 to the power of minus x minus 3. Now let's look at the inside of the bracket. There we have x minus 3. If you subtract 3 from x, it means that the graph was translated 3 units to the right. If you add 3, it means that it's translated 3 units to the left. So if we can describe this translation then from f to h, we will say that f shifted or translated 3 units to the right. Let's look at the mark allocation. You get 1 mark if you've written hx correctly in exponential form. That is 3 to the power of minus bracket x minus 3. Then 1 mark if you said it shifted 3 units. And then 1 mark for the direction right. Let's look now at question 5.5. Determine the values of x for which hx is smaller than 1. Now, there are 3 possible methods that you can use. Let's look at the first method. hx is 27 over 3 to the power of x. So we can say 27 over 3 to the power of x is smaller than 1. Then we multiply 3 to the power of x to the right. And then 27 is smaller than 3 to the power of x. And this can be rewritten as 3 to the power of x is bigger than 27. 27 can be written as 3 to the power of 3. And now that the bases are the same, we can look at the exponents and then say that x is bigger than 3. Or another method is we can say that 27 over 3 to the power of x is the same as 3 to the power of minus x plus 3. And then we can rewrite the 1 on the right-hand side as 3 to the power of 0. The bases are the same and fall away. And then minus x plus 3 is smaller than 0. Minus x is then smaller than negative 3. And then as soon as we divide by a negative, the inequality flips. And then we get the same answer. X is bigger than 3. Lastly, we can do it in the following way. We can look at the original graph f. Now this graph f was smaller than 1 for all x values bigger than 0. That's all the points from A. Now when the graph transformed to the graph h, we said that the graph f shifted 3 units to the right. And that means the point A will also shift 3 units to the right. And now the translated points coordinates will be the coordinates 3 and 1. And therefore, the graph of h will be smaller than 1 for all x values bigger than 3. That's all the x values to the right of the new point 3, 1. And therefore, the solution is x bigger than 3. Let's look at the mark allocation. For the first method, you get 1 mark for the inequality 3 to the power of x bigger than 27, 1 mark for rewriting 27 as 3 to the power of 3, and 1 mark for the final answer, x bigger than 3. For the second method, you get 1 mark for writing 3 to the power of minus x plus 3 smaller than 3 to the power of 0, 1 mark for minus x plus 3 smaller than 0, and 1 mark for the final answer. For the last method, you get 1 mark for the word translation or describing the translation, 1 mark for the y-intercept that shifted 3 units to the right to the point 3, 1, and then 1 mark for the final answer. In question 5.4, a lot of the students said that h was a vertical stretch by a factor of 27. But if the question was read correctly, the question said that the translation had to be described. Translation means a horizontal or a vertical shift. Further, many students rewrote the equation as y equals to 3 to the power of minus x plus 3, and then said that the graph shifted 3 units to the left instead of to the right. Question 5.5 was linked to question 5.4, and a lot of students failed to realize that, so they opted for the algebraic solution to this question, and then they made an error of writing x smaller than 3 instead of x bigger than 3.
Thank you for watching today's video on Smart Culture Education. If you found it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to stay updated, tap the notification bell so you never miss our next lesson. See you in the next video.